Blog Talk Radio.
This is the Donelson File. Tom Donelson with Coco Konski. And originally we were going to have Mary Chastain to be on the show. Unfortunately, she is ill and will not be able to join us, but we'll try to get her on the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, I'm Tom Donelson, the chairman of America's PAC, and also the research associate and project director for America's Majority Foundation. And now let me introduce you to Coco Konski, who will tell us what a great person she is. Go ahead, Coco.
Hey, everybody. My name is Coco. I'm a writer for Medium. I've previously written for BuzzFeed. I do a health blog on everything keto. Now I do this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we do have a lot of ground to cover anyway. So,
right.
So the world did not end, just, like I say, so we're, well, every so often you have these moments of struggle where, okay, what do you do now? But like I say, the good news is the world continues. It's so much going on. There's just so many, it's like, where do you, the beauty of the beauty of today's society is there are no, like I say, no breaks at all because the world keeps going and everything goes crazy. Okay. But I'm going to start off with this unique story. I'm going to kind of read a little bit of it, and I know that you'll have some comments here.
Okay.
Here it is. North Carolina woman arrested at Disney World for possession something that her doctor recommended. She was stopped when CBD oil was discovered in her purse by the sheriff's deputy. The 69-year-old great-grandmother spent 12 hours in jail for release on a $2,000 bond, which she was charged for possession of hashish. Now, and I know you can attest to this because you got fibromyalgia. You were diagnosed with fibromyalgia about a month ago, right? And this was it. She recommended, the doctor recommended CBD oil to help alleviate the pain caused by her arthritis. And she said it's really bad arthritis. I used it for the pain, and it helps. Even though she had a note of recommendation from the doctor, she was still arrested because it's illegal in Florida. Even though it's sold across state lines, I don't know what to think. I can't understand it. The charges were eventually dropped. But the deputy sheriff said he was following the law, even though the CBD oil contained 0 milligram of THC, which is the active agent that gets people stoned with marijuana. Now, that story struck me. It was like, because the first person I thought of, because you use CBD for your pains.
Yes.
And I'm thinking this poor grandmother. I mean, the doctor writes out a little note saying, in effect, she's being told by the doctor, use this drug, it'll help your pain, it helps her pain, and she ends up in jail for 12 hours.
Yeah, well, first of all, they can't do that because that's legally, CBD is legal because it does not contain any THC. So that was a bogus search in itself because, to my knowledge, it's not illegal to carry. So I don't even know what's up with that. That doesn't make any sense at all to me, to be honest, because CBD is legal. It's even legal in most other countries as well. So I don't understand. They were probably very misinformed that they think anything with CBD contains THC, which it does not. Most CBD oils do not contain THC. It's not a hallucinogen. It's just more of a pain reliever. So I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, no, I just like I say, it's just one of those stories. It's I have to be honest with you. It's one of those things. I'm sitting there working out today, And there's this little thing, cross, kind of cross along the TP. A woman gets arrested for CBD, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And so I had to read the story, and so basically, yeah. So
I just don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't you, like I say, kind of describe again, maybe your own experience, with the CDC.
My experience with it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Like it's been really interesting. I haven't actually been using it because every time I use it, my pain keeps going away. So I started using it twice a day. I now maybe use it 3 times a week. And when I do, it's just one drop, and you're supposed to hold it under your tongue for about 35 seconds to 60 seconds, and your pain gradually just goes away. It's been more of a lifesaver than anything. And the fact that I don't even use it that frequently anymore, it's great. I've also been smoking the actual marijuana, which has been total lifesaver for me, honestly. And I thought I would get asthma from it, and I have not experienced that whatsoever. What I usually go for is more of a sativa, or indica, which are very mellow. So for me, I'll smoke once or twice every couple days, and it's great for my insomnia. I'm going to bed at a really early time, which never has happened because of my insomnia. So that in itself has been a lifesaver. It's really life-changing, especially if you've had chronic pain, and it's just really been helpful for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I say, because obviously, marijuana. To me, obviously, marijuana has been around. Interesting enough with the case. Here's a little thought here. I'm going to give this little thought for the audience. They may not know this. You realize during Prohibition, the 1920s, alcohol was illegal, but marijuana was legal. Other than a few states outlawed it, but it was, there was no prohibition of marijuana. So it's just one of those little things in life that maybe, if you ever get asked this question, was marijuana legal during Prohibition, alcohol prohibition? The answer is yes. And I remember my father. I remember when my father years ago. We're at a 4th of July party, and he mentioned to me, he was sitting there talking, and they got into a conversation about marijuana. And my dad made some kind of a comment like, it's no really big deal. In this neighborhood, what do you mean no big deal? What are you talking about? I said, that's no big deal. I mean, I tried it once, and it was no big deal. And this guy's looking at my dad. He says, "You mean, when did you try it?" I said, "Well, in parts of Missouri, it grew wild."
Yeah.
So he and his brother were smoking it. Tried it and smoked it, and I guess they figured they didn't really get much of a high, and that was the end of it. And this, they go with this little conversation. Finally, this guy, this neighbor of us, said, "Gosh, I didn't realize we did those things when our generation." He was totally shocked. This is the Donelson Files with Tom Donelson and Coco Konski. We will be right back after the message about another great program of the Batchelor Radio Network. This is the Donelson Files. part of the Batchelor Pad Radio Network.
Hey, this is L.A. Batchelor reminding you, if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Batchelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABatchelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40 at gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
Yeah, don't forget the Batchelor Pad Show with L.A. Batchelor as part of the Batchelor Pad Radio Network. Yeah, this is the Donelson Files with Tom Donelson, Coco Konski. For those people who wanted to listen to Mary, she will not be joining us. She basically she apologized to us, but she had she got ill this afternoon. So this is where we're at. So, but here's the thing. I'm going to, I've been sitting here thinking about a lot of different things today.
Right.
And there were 3 things that kind of struck me, and I'm going to start off with the first thing here. I'm going to say that I feel bad for people of your generation, Coco, at this point.
Oh, my God.
And
don't feel bad.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, here's the thing. Here's my, like I say, here's the reason why I'm going to suggest what I'm going to suggest here, is this. This is the worst political class that I could sit back in my lifetime that I've looked at and witnessed. I look at the people, and I know you can probably come up with a list of Republicans. They would fit this category, the list of Democrats that fit. I can come with a list of Democrats, which I will, category. But this is the worst political class. This is the worst media class. In some cases, even the worst academician class. And I've been thinking about this all day because, and we'll go a little bit later on the, down the road, and then a program on the media class. But let me begin it this way. In 1996 or 1986, somehow or another, if Donald Trump ran for president, he would not have made it as far as New Hampshire. There were enough people who said, no, this is not going to happen. For Democrats, I guarantee you, if a Representative Omar or a Representative Cortez popped up, they would be so far isolated or not even elected. I mean, these are people that would have been so far off the reservations. And if you look at, like, in 1986, you had Ronald Reagan, who's, in my view, was one of the great presidents of our times. You had running against Walter Mondale in 1984, an experienced vice president, experienced senator. And there are a lot of Democrats, even to this day, that, still revere Mondale as a good guy in so many ways. And and I thought to myself, I look at some of the players today, and I'm thinking, these are guys and gals, they wouldn't even see the light of day because of their radical politics or the ideas that they have or their inexperience, whatever word you want to use. But we live in a generation where, quite frankly, this is the worst political class in so many ways. And in one way, and I study this in Europe. I've been looking at Europe. We have Lauren Bies come in and call on us on occasion, and maybe I'll speak as somebody who's who's been doing politics for 40 years. I wrote a book on the subject, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But when I looked at my book and I looked at some of the things I wrote a couple of years ago, my first thought today is how on target I was on so many areas, and how many people, pundits, politicians, still don't get what is happening today. They truly don't understand how Donald Trump got elected, what's going on in Europe, or how, let's say, Alexander Cortez got elected. These are symptoms of what we're talking about. And the question that comes into play is, are we going to see a continuous decline of leadership, or are we going to finally smarten up and say, okay, maybe down the road, some of these ideas and some of these individuals got to be considered off limits. Your thoughts?
Well, look, there are some people, especially young people, that do want socialism or do want, some type of progressiveness. And to me, I don't think it's any different than back in the 70s when women started, fighting for equal rights. I don't think it's so radicalized as people think it is. I mean, back then, women, having their own rights was more radicalized than anything probably every conservative thought. So to me, this isn't shocking or really new. It's just our generation of basically equal rights from the 70s and before then. So to me, go on.
Totally disagree. I'm going to disagree in this regard, because in the case of again, socialism is a good example.
Okay.
And certainly what you're talking about is the 60s and the 70s. What you saw were two various things that happened that needed to happen. Okay, the civil rights movement of the 1960s, and certainly as women entered the job market more and more, you had to sit back and say, okay, equal rights had to be part of the picture. In other words, this was more of, I use the word, an evolutionary change that was going on where people had to confront these changes, but they were changes that had been going on really for decades and were coming to the forefront. In the sense, okay, for example, when people say, like Martin Luther King, I'm going to use him as an example, but Martin Luther King was my dad's generation. He's not our generation, my generation. He was my dad's generation. That's where he came out of. And if you look at the 50s and the 60s, there were things brewing underneath. And these were natural events that people looked at. Today, I see it totally different. To me, when I read these proposals as an example, I mean, one of the things, people, I use the word Venezuelan socialism, which causes everybody on my opposite side to roll their eyes. But I say, look, we got people proposing ideas that a Scandinavian politician would reject. I mean, that's how far left we have been. We're now talking. We're not just talking about Scandinavia or Denmark or Sweden, or let's say following a more robust welfare state. Because a little secret, Sweden and Denmark pretty much are capitalistic countries with a much more robust welfare state than we have. They have a functioning private sector. And what I see with some of these folks is, I mean, you're looking at tax rates that, if enacted, we're talking 90% plus. These are tax rates about nearly double what you've seen in a Scandinavian country. Now, in the Scandinavian countries, they do have a lot of value-added taxes that are added to the income tax. But you do have a functioning market economy. And and that's the difference to me today versus, I know what, let's say in the 60s and the 70s, where you basically were seeing movements that have been in the forefront for decades that were coming to the forefront because they had to come to the forefront. The issue had forced itself upon us. Today, it's the complete opposite. I don't see any, it's the other way around. To me, socialism, I mean, we faced, let's say, let me put it in this capacity. We have basically had an experimentation over the past 100 years. Where we've seen
Right.
Marxist government exist, we've seen capitalist government exist, and there's no comparison. Capitalism, free market is superior in every way possible. We have a 100-year experiment. It's not like we don't have an experiment. We don't have something to draw from. This is not like maybe in the 1870s and 1880s when Karl Marx book Das Kapital was being read by people. This was a theory, but a theory's been tried. We know it doesn't work. And yet we're seeing, it's almost as if we're trying to relearn everything. It's almost like we're going back to the past and pretend the last 100 years of experimentation didn't work. That's where I see the difference is. Your view.
I mean, I don't know, because listen, I know there are a lot of Democrats like myself who are pro-capitalism. I mean, everybody likes to make money, and so that's one thing why I will never really side with it. I understand it in concept. On paper, it looks great, but in reality, it doesn't work, in my opinion. But then, I see countries like Finland and, Switzerland that are thriving. Women get basically the same pay as men do. They get paid maternity leave for many months. And even some households get extra income if they have children. So I'm kind of split in the middle of that. So that's just how I've been feeling.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, let me put it this way. Maybe a good evidence of what you're talking about is right now the Democratic race, the primary, because over the past week and a half, Joe Biden has opened up his lead. I mean, what was a close primary, rating? Again, this is just the beginning of the race. We don't know what's going to happen, but certainly a lot of people are looking. Sometimes at this point in a political campaign, people are not necessarily paying attention, but they are, maybe it's the familiarity, but they at least have a basic understanding. Well, Bernie's a socialist, Biden is not. And I do see that it's almost as if the party of Coco Konski has decided, you know what, Joe's our guy, and we're rejecting, the hard left over here. I don't know if that's the case, but I think it's an instinctual, because right now people are not paying attention to the issue per se as much as they're reacting to the perception of the person that they see running. And their perception is Joe Biden is a moderate, Sanders is a socialist, and everybody else seems to be running on the Sanders ticket. That's my thought. And that's what I'm thinking. And maybe what you're making a point is, maybe the point that you're making is that silent majority within the Democratic Party may be speaking up.
Right. Well, like I said, I think Joe Biden will do really good. I think, predictably, I think he might be able to turn Texas blue if he was the main nominee. That's just what I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure Texas, but here's the thing. I would look at Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I'll guarantee you one thing. He knows where Wisconsin is, and he would actually step at least across the state lines to visit it, which didn't happen for the previous candidate. So, and that's to me where, and again, it's going to be interesting because I think that's where the biggest threat to, let's say, the Republicans or Trump is going to be is in that Midwest battleground is how that, what I call the Trump Republicans or the independents who voted for Trump, would they look at Joe Biden differently than they looked at Hillary Clinton? And would they, and that is to me, it's you make a good point. I'm not sure Texas is going to be Joe Biden's, but I would say those other states that, let's say, Hillary lost by close margin, could Joe Biden be the guy who takes those things back? And that, to me, is where, his strength could be. And we, again, it's a long campaign. We don't, but, But to me, my instinct tells me that Biden's popularity at this point is dealing to the perception of who he is, and the fact that he may be the most, as you stated over on our show, the most moderate individual out there, or perception of the most moderate. Whereas everybody else is on the other side, running on the other lane. He may have that one lane all to himself, and you're looking at 46%. That's nearly half of the party basically saying we want a moderate. At least look at a moderate. That's my view.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is something you've been saying all along. So go ahead.
Right. I mean, like I said, I think just because he is the most moderate candidate in the Democratic Party, and you have to understand there's a lot of people running, like more than a lot. I think half the registered Dems are running right now. So I guess just time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, time is going to tell. We'll find out soon. I mean, we'll find out because we got Iowa coming up in January, but sometime as the fall goes, we'll see where everything shakes out. Because right now, I think the last time I checked, it was like 22, 23, 24 candidates. And Bill de Blasio is now thinking about, I guess he's got, you would figure running New York City would be a full-time operation. But obviously, Bill has decided, Mayor Bill has decided that, he's got time, I guess he wants a freelance as a candidate for the presidency of the United States. Maybe it's like one of my friends says, it's probably easier to keep tabs of the people not running for president in the Democratic Party than running for the Democratic Party.
Well, that's very true. I mean, it would be easier to not see who is not running. Yes.
All right. Again, we're going to take a quick break here. This is the Donelson Files, Tom Donelson, Coco Constantine on the Batchelor Pad Radio Network. And we're going to kind of talk about some great Batchelor Pad Radio Network shows.
If you want to hear another view of the latest developments in Trump's Washington, listen to the Dr. Larry Show. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Larry is a former businessman, entrepreneur, college president, and author who provides background and context for current events and trends in politics, education, foreign policy, and religion from a conservative perspective. Tune in and hear the other side as Dr. Larry talks with Washington insiders exclusively on blogtalkradio.com and the podcast at thebatchelorpadnetwork.com.
Join Barry Barnes for Locker Talk on the Batchelor Pad Network as he presents NFL news and evaluates players. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern at blogtalkradio.com.
Now, two great shows, Dr. Larry, the Dr. Larry Show, which follows, by the way, this show at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget the Locker Talk at 9 a.m. Friday on the Batchelor Pad Radio Network. And also, if you go to the BatchelorPadNetwork.com or BlogTalkRadio.com, you can also re-listen to this show and other great shows on the Batchelor Pad Radio Network. All right. Yeah, you got a new website coming up, so why don't you kind of tell people?
I'm so excited, y'all. Okay, so I recently went on this journey, if you will. I have hypothyroid and I have polycystic ovarian disorder. For those who don't know what that is, polycystic ovarian disorder is basically a disorder that makes you gain weight no matter how little you eat. Your chances of having children are very slim, if not at all. Most women that have polycystic ovarian disorder have to get IVF or look for an option because it's very rare for them to have kids. And on top of that, I have hypothyroid, which sucks so much. If you guys have had it or dealt with it, then you know exactly how much of a bitch it is to lose that weight. So I started looking into this whole keto thing because all my friends are on it. And, for me, it isn't super hard to lose weight. Like, I run. Like, I was talking to Tom earlier before we started the show, and I was on top of a mountain because I go hiking 6 days a week for about 2 hours. And on top of that, I run 3 to 4 miles. So I started this whole keto journey thing, and it is like night and day. I know, like, everyone's been talking about it, and they're all like, oh, does it really work? Like, how can you give up sugar? How can you give up that? So I started this group on Facebook, and it grew in numbers. So I decided to launch my own website because of all the recipes that I post. You know, I post everything from, like, making your own tacos to your own, you know, burgers, your own everything. Basically everything you want to eat, but that makes you gain weight. I basically modified it where it still tastes good. And I've also included, like, my favorite alcohol drinks to make. Like, I found a really good low-carb Manhattan for people who really love Manhattans. So I just got the website. I'm kind of tweaking it right now, but it's called GetKatoWithCoco.com. So I have the site. I'm just kind of working on it. It should be done by this weekend. And, you know, I'm going to post, like, recipes, and basically every recipe that I have is 0 sugar. And you actually might be surprised on what you can eat. Like, for example, I love bacon. Who doesn't like bacon? I love bacon. And bacon has 0 sugar and 0 carbs. So technically, if you wanted, you could literally eat as much bacon as you want. You know, you just have to watch the cholesterol. That's about it. But technically, you know, you can eat all the bacon and cheese as you want because cheese also has 0 sugar and it has about 1 carb. So a lot of my recipes tend to have 2 to 3 carbs per serving. I don't have more than 20 carbs per day. I'm very strict on that. I don't have sugar. I don't take grains. I don't eat anything that's basically grown from the ground, like rooted. And I managed to lose, like 24 pounds in like 4 weeks. So it's been insane. How if I can lose the weight, anybody else can. So I started this little website, and I'm hoping to actually publish kind of like a cookbook for people that, you know, are kind of on a budget but still want to follow the keto lifestyle. So there you have it.
Okay, what's the website? When can people get on the website?
This weekend. I mean, I'm tweaking it up. I'm going to add my first recipe, which will be how to do a perfect taco bar, meaning you want to throw a party, you want to have tacos. Like, I'm going to show you guys how to do the perfect taco bar that actually tastes better because when I tried it, I was cooking in the kitchen with my best friend Mike, who was on the show yesterday, and he has the smallest kitchen known to mankind, and if I could do it there, you literally can cook it anywhere. And it's really simple. It's literally 3 ingredients. For the shell, it's just fried cheese. You set them in the oven for 4 to 7 minutes. And then you're actually going to use a spatula to bend the shape so you get like a taco shape. And you let that cool off. And then you just grind up your meats, your avocado, your sour cream, your I like to use the queso, skim queso. That was amazing. And cilantro. So it was and literally one taco has less than 100 calories. So if you guys are really into that, that's what I put. They don't come out picture perfect, which is the point. You know, you're going to basically, what you make is what you're going to see. So, and I don't make food that I would never eat because I love burgers and I love, I'm doing next week, I'm doing a mock pizza made from cauliflower crust. And I'm doing a keto mac and cheese, which I've tried and it's great. It's obviously not the real thing. So don't go into thinking it's going to be better than the real thing because then you're just kidding yourselves. But it's pretty damn close. And the website is called GetKatoWithCoco.com. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do, if people want, here's the thing: we're on the Donelson Files Twitter and on our website, DonelsonTFiles.com. This weekend, as soon as she gets everything up, we're going to have an official announcement on that as well. So,
yeah.
And while we're doing this,
and also, like, if you guys want to reach out to me and tell me what do you guys want to eat, like, what do you really like? Like, I mean, tonight I'm making braised short ribs, and those have 0 sugar, and you wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't even know it. Honestly, you wouldn't know it. It's not that hard to go on a no-sugar diet if you're eating the right things. So I'm trying to make it simple for everyone.
Well, okay. Well, good. Like I say, keep your eyes open to DonelsonTFiles.com. And we will have, like I say, DonelsonTFiles.com. And we will have more information on that. So sometime this weekend we'll have an official announcement. We'll also have it on Twitter on Donelson Files. And while we're at it, because here's the other thing, speaking of things that I was, I was kind of just, thinking about is this. I'm about to basically, this is called, I normally say, I'm not going to use the word bragging because if you could do it, if you've done it, it's not bragging. It's just facts. But all right, here's the thing. I wrote a book called Rise of National Populism and Democratic Socialism, and I'm looking at and I was thinking about, okay, over the past year and a half, what's happened? When I look at my book, and I and the one thing that comes to mind is how can he, and some of the things that I talked about in my book a year and a half ago, how, are either happening or moving along the lines I said that they would happen. There were 3 things I talked about. I talked about the rise of the socialist movement within the Democratic Party and its impact, which we're seeing. And the question is going to be, is Joe Biden going to be the last hurrah for what's left of the moderate Democrats? It's not, and will we see a split and have a socialist movement separate? But my view was the Democratic Party was and is becoming the Socialist Party of America. But we'll find out where we go from there, because I've always felt, Bernie Sanders may have lost the primary in 2016, but he may have won the long-term war, and we'll see. But I view that the one thing, because when I looked at the data in the book that we have, because my book is separated in different parts, it talks about populism, socialism. We did detailed data analysis of the 2016, and we talked about, Trump, what is Trumpism, how it's going to be impacted, foreign policy-wise, and the future of the Republican Party and the future of politics in general. And there were certain observations I made. The first observation I made is the impact of the socialist movement within the Democratic Party. And the one thing I've noticed, and when we're looking at the data, is that there is a left-wing, some of the questions we would ask in 2016, we asked again in 2018. We saw a movement toward the hard left among Democrats. Issues that, let's say, I would use the word moderate, became leftist in certain areas. But on the other side, Republicans and independents pretty much, I looked at the data today that we've been collecting versus what we collected, let's say, after the 2016 election. They're not that much different in some of the key issues. So, but here was the thing with populism. This is, what I wrote, and we followed up. You've met you remember J.D. Johannes.
Yeah,
he's been on our show. And J.D. and I, we wrote a piece, a report. We kind of looked at the data and said, okay, what would what would populism look like if there's not some sort of a synergy between conservatism and populism? In other words, if Trump fails or he loses, 2020, what would become of that populace? Because one of the things we found is that for a lot of people, it's not so much the economics they vote for, but the value side. We're finding this more and more, that values, what kind of society we want to be, how we view America, matters as much, if not more so, especially in good economic times, than the economics. And we kind of found, 30-40% of the Republicans were more of what we viewed as traditional values as opposed to free market values. And we kind of asked the question, what would happen to populism? And one of the things we looked at was Marie Le Pen in France. And the irony, to me, when I look at Marie Le Pen, here's the thing with Marie Le Pen. She's viewed as a right-winger in France, and she's viewed right-winger media. Well, what people don't realize, she essentially ran that on a left-wing almost, she basically borrowed about 70% of her ideas came from the Communist Party candidate that finished, maybe a half a percentage point behind her in the original election. In other words, the present president ran to the right of Marie Le Pen. And we kind of viewed that as saying, well, is there a possibility that you see a move that a good number of these people simply go look for their version of Marie Le Pen, going beyond that as opposed if Trump failed? Because the second part that we said is Trumpism and conservatism are to be synergized. And one of the things we looked at was an article written by Richard Lowry and Ramesh Plumero in National Review, February 2016, where they put together a conservative/populist movement ideal. And I look at that article today, 80% of what they wrote about has been done. The synergism is happening. And it's like the third time, in his history, to my view, is that you've seen that a synergy between a populist impulse and conservatism. Reagan did it in 1980 with his, Reagan Democrats. And what people tend to not realize that Wayne McKinley, a president that very few people know, he actually put together a coalition that lasted 30 years. And he basically, in his own way, combined a populist strain. Even though a lot of historians will say he was a clear-crack, big business candidate, he actually put together a coalition of immigrants, minorities, in particular blacks. People have to remember 1900, that blacks were more likely to be Republicans. And, the middle class, rural areas, farmers, up-and-coming workers. He, in effect, put a coalition that lasted for nearly 3 decades, until 1932. So that was the question. Those are the things we looked at and saw ourselves and said, you know what? This, I'm not far off from being wrong in a lot of these things. And going into 2020, we're seeing a lot of things come into play that I discussed in my book. And we're going to take a quick break. This is the Donelson Files. Tom Donelson, Coco Konski. And we'll be right back after this announcement from another great programming from the Batchelor Pad Radio Network.
Hello, this is Sandy Eason, the host of Sandy's Secrets. Come and join us, where we will be talking about women's issues of sexuality, sensuality, and self-love. We'll be coming soon, exclusively on the Batchelor Pad Radio Network.
Yeah, this is the Batchelor. This is Tom Donelson with the Donelson Files, along with my co-host Coco Konski. And like I say, originally we were going to have a guest on, but she was not able to make it due to health reasons. But you get the really, I guess you'd say, Coco, when you say we still got a pretty good thing with just the two of us.
Yes. I want to bring you a story. I don't know if you heard about this, but
Go ahead. No.
Did you hear about the couple who died of a plague after eating raw marmot meat for good health?
No, I did not.
Okay, they basically died from the bubonic plague. So I'm going to go back to the story. A Mongolian couple reportedly died after contracting the bubonic plague from the consumption of a raw marmot meat, and kidneys. Basically, raw marmot, it's like eating a gopher. Several foreign tourists were among the more than 100 people who had to be isolated and treated. It began May 1st, and it was a precaution to prevent spread of this disease, which is some of the world's most gruesome pandemics, the bubonic plague. They thought in a ritual that eating the raw carcass of the dead marmot would bring them good health. But these rodents were basically covered in fleas and infested with them, and basically are the main carriers of this plague. So I just thought it wasn't funny, but it's like, really? Like, these were American tourists who did this ritual, and basically you die within 18 to 24 hours once the disease hits. And my question is, why the hell would you just eat it a raw rodent? Like raw, not even cooked, raw. I don't even know what to make of this. But this has been hitting my news site I've seen it at least 3 or 4 times, so I had to do it. I had to talk about it. So don't eat raw rodents, please.
All right. I would say raw rodent. Don't eat rodents at all.
I eat alligator, and I've eaten alligator. I've eaten turtle. I've had, I've had exotic meats, basically. But I would never eat a rodent. I'm sorry. I can't. I crossed the line.
Well, the thing that comes into play to me is I've eaten gators. I mean, if you live in Florida, you're going to eat gators. And I got family members who, and by the way, it tastes like chicken. That's the old saying, it tastes like chicken. It does.
No, it does. I had alligator like 2 weeks ago. It does. It tastes like a very mild chicken. It's a little gamey, but it's not, horrific. I'm just saying, if there's like, I'm all for holistic health and all that, but eating a dead rodent that's infested with, fleas will not bring you good health. Just FYI.
Well, I'm going to put it this way. Just the idea of eating a rodent, period, would be enough right there for me.
Well, basically what happens within 6 days of infection, you get like headaches, lymph nodes, your skin starts to bleed out of your skin. So, bleeding in skin and other organs as well as pneumonia. You're going to die. There's no cure for this. So, do it at your own risk, I guess.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Now the last one, we got about, we're going to, like I said, we got about 12 minutes left. And what I wanted to also kind of conclude here with is William Barr's, the subpoena of William Barr.
Right.
And Trump basically saying, here's the middle finger, you're not going to get my tax returns. My own view is on this issue is very simple. First of all, number one, in the case of the documents that Congress is asking, that includes grand jury testimony. And I'm just going to be blunt. Barr should give them the middle finger because, number one, it's not legal. You're not allowed to release grand jury materials, period. Number two, Barr's already set up a room where literally he basically said, okay, you want to see this? You have to come to this room. You cannot take pictures. You can't take it out. You can't do anything. But you can read the grand jury testimony. You can read it in this room. You just can't go outside. You can't take anything out with you. You can't take pictures or anything. So in effect, basically have this. And for those people who've actually read the Mueller report, well, that was a lightly reducted report to begin with. So there's more than enough data you want to look at and say to yourself, okay, if you want to just say it's there's enough data out there to sit back and say, what do you believe, what happened and what didn't happen? Make that decision. Was there collusion? Which, the Mueller report is pretty well clear. There is no collusion. The obstruction of justice, I would say, as I stated on the show previously, I think William Barr's theories on that are far more clear. This is nothing more than gamemanship.
Oh, come on. No, man. You know what? If Barr really, really, truly, believed that President Trump was innocent, do you honestly think he wouldn't, give out the information, like hand out the reports? I mean, the Treasury Department was even, talking about like they're refusing to his tax returns. I mean, and let's face it, what came out yesterday, him losing $1 billion a year from 1984 to 1994. I mean, of course he's not going to want that to come out. But, he's the one who's boosting our economy, quote unquote. By what? By losing $1 billion a year? Like, I really trust someone like that? Of course he didn't want that to come out.
Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, my point would be very simple. This: if you've been paying attention to the election 2016, you would know, because the guy had bankruptcies. Including around 1990, 91, he nearly went under.
Then how come he acts? Everyone knows that. It's not like a surprise. But why does he act like he's the best businessman on earth? He acts like it. He talks about it, and yet everybody knows like how much bankrupt he was at. But he talks like he's never made a mistake. He talks, like he's never been bankrupt, which is a complete lie. Maybe if he owned up to it, maybe I would change my tune, but he doesn't, because nothing that Trump does could ever be bad.
Well, I mean, but the answer to your question is this was common knowledge in 2016. What you're seeing is what we already know.
If it's common knowledge, then why does he say how he only hires the best? He only does the best. Oh, he does all these great business deals. If that was true, if he really believed that, he wouldn't be such a pompous dick about it. I'm sorry, that's what he is. He's a pompous dick.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the point will be, I'm very honest with you. I mean, here's the thing. Like I say, I mean, I opposed his here's the thing. I opposed his nomination. But I voted, but I supported him in the general election because, quite frankly, Hillary Clinton was far worse in so many ways. She was not a good person, and she would have been. And she had far more flaws than what you think. than to me that I view it as Donald Trump. And so to me, and a lot of voters understood that instinctively. They took that into account. If your premise is that we're surprised, no, look, the guy brags, he brags. That's his. That's what he does. It's not like we.
Bragging. Guess what? He's
like
the president. He's not a citizen, and that's what I'm sorry. This is what drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
Is the Republicans act like what a saint he is, and he's like, no matter what you throw at them, literally, like you talk about how he's lost $1 billion a year since 1984 to 94. They're like, oh well, that doesn't matter. Oh, that doesn't count. Oh well, that's just BS. That's just fake news. It's like, really? Open your eyes. Come on, people. Open your eyes. I mean, I know you don't want your savior, that was sent down from Jesus to, be wrong about anything. But guess what? No one is perfect, and he needs to own up to his own mistakes. And the fact that he's not doing that, and the Republican Party will literally kiss his ass no matter what he does, Tom. No matter what he does. That's just a fact.
Well, let me ask you. Look. If you're saying, what do you want the Republicans to do? Hey, we're going to impeach you because you're a lousy businessman 30 years ago to 20 years ago?
How about owning up to the fact that their saint and savior isn't really a saint? How about owning the fact that maybe they shouldn't be endorsing people like Steve King in the past, guys who didn't believe the Holocaust happened, it just drives me crazy. Why do you think so many people are leaving the party? It's because we are going backwards instead of forward.
Well, let me put it this way. Right, that's your rant because let me
you can put it any way you want. I'm just spitting out facts.
I think I said the Democratic Party is not in position anymore to be given lectures about anti-Semitism when they've already.
Oh God! Okay, if I have to hear that one more time, okay, yes. Okay. Listen, I'm not one to disagree. Yes, it was the Democrats, but guess what? The Republicans are not the old Democrats. Hate to break it to you.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I'll put it to you this way. Representative Omar is every bit an anti-Semitist and a bigot that Stephen King is. That's not a debatable point. It's there. The difference is she is sitting on a foreign relations committee. King has been stripped of all of his committees.
She's not an anti-Semite, and I'm sorry. I'm a Jewish person, and I'm speaking as a Jew. She's not anti-Semitic. She just questions Israel's policies, as do I. I'm not a fan of Israel.
I'm gonna put it this way. I'll put it this way. When you use words like the world been hypnotized by Jews, which she has done numerous times in the past, that's anti-Semitism.
She did not say that.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Okay.
She did say that.
Well, was this according to Breitbart?
No, actually, no. I mean, it's there. It's public record. It's all public record.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, Cato Institute, the most glorious news people on earth.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Let me put it this way. Well, let me put it this way. Based on the record of the mainstream media, CNN, and all of these over the past 3 years, they're not in the, they've botched the Mueller report. They botched the Russian investigation. They've missed the biggest news dealing with the FISA courts. They've botched the tax. I mean, we just got the New York Times admitting, hey, we've been misrepresenting Trump's tax cuts for the past year and a half. No, I mean, see it. No. So look, yeah, and if they want to cover up for Omar, which they are doing presently, that's their prerogative. But she's an anti-Semite, more so.
Okay, cool.
And yeah,
I'm not. There's no point. You're not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change your mind. You're claiming like she is, and I'm telling you she's not, just because she disagrees with Israel's policies, as do I, as do a lot of.
Well, she's a little more.
Actually,
she's a little more than that. It's a little more than that. It's not just disagreeing. Okay. It's questioning its right to exist. There's a little bit difference there. No, she is anti-Semitic. Like I said. Right? I mean, it's okay.
She's anti-Semitic, and I'm Egyptian. I'm Egyptian.
Well, you want to be Egyptian?
I'm sorry. I don't agree at all.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're going to disagree on that, and I'll go back to my original point, because here's the big story that people are missing. Forget the Barr subpoena. The biggest story is the abuse of the FISA courts and the use of possible fake evidence, i.e. the Steele dossier, which on a daily basis keeps them. I mean, nobody anymore accepts as being real. And it was probably misdirection by the Russians themselves, by the way. This is where they got the information. Well, the reality is that's the biggest story. And we're talking about the biggest violation of civil liberties in our country. And the media is yet to understand the consequences of this. When you have rogue FBI agents and a rogue FBI leadership basically using fake dossiers to get warrants to spy on a political party, and ask yourself one question. If they get away with that, what will they get away with in the future? The second question that comes into play was Loretta, the Department of Justice. Where were they? And where was the President of the United States? Did he know? When did he know? And what about his Vice President? Don't forget, Joe Biden is a part of that administration that may have been involved in the abuse of the FISA courts. That's the biggest story. And that's the story that we're not seeing. And there's enough documentation on that. Look, I will give you the last word, and then we'll have to then we're going to turn over to the Dr. Larry show.
My last word, huh?
Yeah, I'm giving you the last word.
Oh, God. Well, my last word being, I don't think she's an anti-Semite. I made my point on that. No need to repeat it. But I do guys want you to check out my blog. and I hope you find some inspiration in that, because that is my goal.
Okay, well, this is the Donelson Files. This is Tom Donelson with Coco Konski. And we'll be turning very shortly over to the Dr. Larry Show.
LA Bachelor's the Bachelor Pad Show. Hoping you had a good one wherever you are and you tuning in here. Thanks to the show before us, of course. We appreciate this as we continue to broadcast this bad boy. Keep in mind, the BachelorPadNetwork.com. The BachelorPadNetwork.com is the website. You can check us out, and we certainly appreciate you if you do. Coming up shortly, we hope to be talking with Luke Williams. He is the publisher and editor of the Black College Sports page, and he'll join us to talk about a couple of things as it relates to HBCU sports, get his thoughts on the draft, where he thought some players would go, and he thought they would go higher, and some surprises. Also, Winston-Salem State makes a change at the football helm. Want to bring in Tony T. Mac McLean, my co-host. T, always good to have you.
How's it going?
Good, man.
To follow up on that Winston thing, the guy, the AD who cut Boulware loose, he's actually an interim guy himself. So it's kind of a crazy situation going on there with the whole and the timing. I think when we talked about this before, the timing couldn't have been worse with this is like heavy recruiting season, and we're not that far removed from the start of camp. I guess in what is it, May? We still I know it's still a little while with the colleges, but this is heavy recruiting time. So yeah, I'd be anxious to hear what Luke's take on this is.
Well, we're going to talk to Luke right now. He's the publisher and editor of the Black College Sports page. Always good to have him on. And Luke, I hope all is well. You're feeling a lot better, and we're always praying for you, sir, you and your wife. And thanks for coming on this evening.
Glad to be with you guys again. Sorry for taking a little minute there. I've been at the Apple store all day getting my had to get my phone replaced, and I lost all of my. Oh, not lost them, but they're updating. So I'm sorry, just a little late getting to you.
Oh, no worries. So Tony and I were just kind of briefly talking about the story you talked about. Winston-Salem State making a change with Coach Boulware out, interim coach in. What are you hearing, and what was any basic reasoning that you've heard? I mean, aside from the obvious of them wanting him to win big, win more championships, probably style points even, Luke. But what do you hear?
Well, John Dell, who covers Winston-Salem State, has been covering the Rams for quite some time. He's the beat writer for the Winston-Salem Journal.
Sure.
He wrote a story on, let's see, today's Tuesday. I think it came out either Friday or Saturday with some details about his termination and the appeal that he's filing. It turns out that two players in an April 4th spring practice got into an altercation at practice. It continued into the dormitory, at which time assistant coaches as well as Coach Boulware were called to try to quell the altercation. There was a report that there was a gun involved in the altercation, that maybe one of the guys had a gun. And what the university is saying is that Coach Boulware did not properly report the circumstances of the fight, nor the presence of the weapon during the fight, and consequently that was their cause for termination. So really, as it stands now, it has nothing to do with Coach Boulware's record on the field, which, as we know, has been very good. They have not competed for the championship the last couple of years, but he did win 2 championships previous to that. What the story said is that the attorney for Coach Boulware says that he followed all of the proper instructions. There's a name of an act that governs what happens on college campuses and how you have to report it, when you report it, these kinds of things. What they're saying, what the administration is saying, he did not report it in the proper manner and in the proper time, and that therefore it was cause for his termination. So the appeal process, as I understand it, is going on right now, and a determination will be made at some point within 30 days whether he actually did meet those things. They will have an appeal hearing about that to determine whether he met the requirements. So that's that issue. And that story came out, as I said, I think it was Friday or Saturday, that gave the details of his firing. Other than that, there was no discussion about anything about his performance or his team's performance, those kinds of things.
You know, Lou, 2 parts. Do you buy that? I mean, there are obviously some legal stuff involved. We don't know. And if he sort of wins an appeal, do they reassign him? Do they keep him on, in the administration?
Yeah, well, the whole purpose of the appeal is to keep his job as the head coach. He is not by any means trying to lose his job as the head coach, nor is he trying to lose the 2 years and $130,000 has been reported that he would lose if he is fired for cause. Now, they could fire him regardless, but they would have to pay him that $260,000, $130,000 for each of the 2 years left in his contract. So in one sense, he's fighting for 2 things. If they intend to terminate him, and they can terminate him with cause, they do not have to pay him. But if they terminate him and do not have what is referred to as cause, which is outlined in his contract, then they have to pay him the money. So he is fighting on 2 ends. I'm sure and he says publicly that he intends to remain as coach of Winston-Salem State. But barring that, if he can remove this means that they're saying is for cause, then he can also keep the money or have the money that's owed him. And that, that's at the heart of what a lot of people are discussing, is that, if they can prove that he did not follow, if the hearing proves that he did not follow the proper procedures, then they can dismiss him, and then that's $260,000 that Winston-Salem State would not have to fork up to pay him for those remaining 2 years. So he has publicly said he wants to remain the coach. So in one sense, he's fighting for that, but in another sense, he's fighting for something more important, which I'm sure is his own and his family's security in terms of that contract for the next 2 years.
Talking with Luke Williams, the editor and publisher of the Black Collar Sports page. We'll get to where you can find it, what you can watch, what you can read in just a bit. Luke, before I go to T-Mac, just to stay along those lines, the way this went down, and obviously we're in a different era now where, coaches have to be more mindful of these type of situations. Case in point of this sort of handbook that they have to follow, this kind of protocol they have to follow. But does it set a dangerous precedent in the sense that here's a guy, if they fire him because of this incident, then it is what it is. But if there's other stuff involved, do you think that he, like you said, with his record being so good, that he deserves to get fired? And does this set a dangerous precedent in that regard, especially with HBCUs?
Well, there is no shortage of alumni that can be unsatisfied with the performance of coaches. That happens all the time in every sport. There was certainly some calling for him to leave for varying kinds of reasons. And what basically it comes down to the fact that he inherited a program that won 3 out of 4 years, won CIAA championship, went to the National Division II championship, and they had an offensive-minded coach who was Connell Maynard, who really benefited from Winston-Salem State's short dalliance with moving to Division I and becoming an FCS football program as well as a Division I in all other sports. And Connell Manor really benefited from the fact that they had spent 3 years recruiting Division I players. And many of them, some of them stayed at Winston-Salem State and really were the impetus and the engine behind them actually winning those CIAA championships and making a run at a national championship, in fact. So after Connell Manor left to go to Hampton, a defensive-minded coach took over, Coach Boulware, who was the defensive coordinator under Manor. And the bottom line was, I think many people thought that he was not imaginative offensively. After seeing them average 40 points a game and throwing for 300 yards a game, he came in with his more conservative style, and some of the fans were disgruntled. His record was very good. I said he won back-to-back championships. I think he lost the first year he went to the championship game in the CIAA. He won back-to-back championships. They went to the playoffs. They lost. They went up to New York in the playoffs and lost a game like 48-41. So, it would be hard to really complain unless you're an alumni. It'd be hard to complain about a guy who's got a 65 to 700, 650 to 700 winning percentage as he had at Winston-Salem State. But that's not uncommon. Well, does this set a bad precedent? No, I don't think so. Because, the same things that happen at big schools, there are guys with winning records that lose their jobs for varying kinds of reasons. I mean, we could cite several examples of that. So, no, he's done a good job. But, it's like, what have you done for me lately is the mentality that a lot of folks have, when they are dealing with their own programs and how they see it. So they did find a reason. You could say this is a reason to fire him because there was a lot of noise from alumni about wanting him out. But as it is now, they have to deal with this legitimate issue that they've given. I don't think they could fire him. And as you know, if they wanted to get rid of him, he had 2 years on his contract. They were not going to fire him and have to deal with a $260,000 a bill. Many of them have told me, many of the Winston-Salem State alumni, I actually lived next door to one who played football at Winston-Salem State. Said, we don't have $260,000 to pay him. So in a sense, you're right. This could be an out for the school if they really want him to be out. But in the meantime, they're going to have to prove that, he actually violated. I think it's called the Hines Act. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it's called.
Well, it's and the only thing I'll say as I turn it over to my good friend Tony McClain, they knew what they were getting. He was the defensive coordinator under Maynard. He's a defensive coach, so naturally he's going to put a lot of emphasis on that side. But it is what it is. We're talking with Luke Williams here on the pad. If you have a question, hit us up. 646-929-0130. You can hit us up at Facebook at Pad Nation, Pad Nation 2 at Twitter. With that, I turn the questions over to my good friend, Tony T. Mac McClain.
Luke, again, I try not to get caught up in how the climate is, but it's almost, you can't ignore it. I'm up here in Connecticut, and I think you're familiar with what happened with Kevin Ollie. You're seeing some of these black assistant coaches taking the fall during this during this college basketball scandal with some of the teams as well. Is it becoming open season for like black head coaches now, where you're seeing in a sense where they're literally trying to find just cause, like with Boulware, and it's not just related to, it's not just in the HBCU sports, but just in college sports in general.
It's hard to say, Tony. It happens at all levels, including at the HBCU level. And when it can come from the administration sometimes. It can come because coaches don't get along with the athletic director, or the coaches are not thought of highly by the president, for example. It can be a series of things we've seen in basketball with Kevin Nickelberry at Howard University. There were a series of things where there was a lawsuit filed by players against the coach talking about that the coach had treated them badly and negatively influenced their ability to play professional basketball. Then you had a fight where the coach was suspended, and they ended up making a a settlement that he would resign at the end of the year. And, we will get a chance to talk about this, but Howard University just hired a new basketball coach yesterday in the wake of that. There's a whole lot of story related to that. In fact, as we talk, I'm trying to send LA this week's page talking about new coaches both at Morgan State and at Howard that were both announced yesterday. Those are men's basketball coaches at Howard and Morgan State. And there were a lot of things related to both of those situations. The Howard situation, as again I said, he had a situation where players filed a grievance against him. He was suspended 2 games after a fight in a game at Howard, between Howard and Norfolk State, and then he resigned at the end of the year. The other one was Todd Bozeman, who had been in Morgan State for 13 years, and there had been repeated calls to get Todd Bozeman out of Morgan State for a variety of reasons. And he had really lasted this long. So it may be 5 years where he beat the odds and stayed at Morgan State before they decided to make a change this year. So now I don't think it's an open season, so to speak, on black coaches or HBCU coaches. I'm sure that a case could be made for that. But from my experience, it appears more like, and this is usually coaches that have some kind of mercurial disposition, where they kind of like court controversy a lot, and they're always on a yearly basis they're being evaluated about whether they're going to be kept or not, even when they are winning. Todd Bozeman had Morgan State in the MEAC tournament championship like 7 out of 9 years, but there was still being calls regularly for him to be removed. And finally, again, after 13 years, he leaves this year for Morgan State, and they made an interesting hire yesterday. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about. So, I think that Boulware is just an example of a situation where all of those things kind of converged. You never know how much stuff is going on behind the scenes, how much of this may have been that the administration was looking for a reason to get rid of him. Obviously, none of that's going to come out publicly. That's going to be left to a lot of speculation.
Well, in turn, talk about the Morgan State hire, if you can, the Morgan State and the Howard hires.
Yeah, well, the big thing has been that this has been going on since the MEAC tournament ended in mid-March. That both Morgan State and Howard wanted to have someone in place by the end of the Final Four. The problem was that the people they were going after are making much more money as assistants than Howard or Morgan could pay them as head coaches. So they were trying to work out the disparity. The guys who ended up getting the jobs were at Howard University, Kenny Blakeney, a former Duke player who played and won 2 national championships under Mike Krzyzewski at Duke, eventually was an assistant at both Harvard under former Duke player Tommy Amaker, and ended up being an assistant at Columbia this year in the Ivy League. He's the new coach at Howard University. He's a D.C. native, played at DeMatha High School under Morgan Wooten before going to Duke and playing under Krzyzewski. So his pedigree and his background is very good in terms of his connection to high-caliber basketball. He was hired at Howard. The funny thing is it was hired after Howard had a dance, so to speak, with the coach that Morgan State hired, who's Kevin Brodus, who is an assistant at Maryland, a former assistant at Maryland before he took this job at Morgan State. He was supposedly the lead guy at Howard, and Brodus is, again, a D.C. area guy who coached at Georgetown on 2 occasions. He coached, again, with Mark Churgin's staff at Maryland, but he also had been a head coach at Binghamton, University of New York at Binghamton, was a head coach for 2 years, and there was a big controversy where he was fired. He was accused of being a part of a NCAA violation and infractions. He eventually exonerated himself and got a $1.2 million settlement out of his dismissal at Binghamton. He's known around the country as one of the top recruiters, Kevin Brodus. He decides to take the Morgan State job after really Howard courted him, and many thought that he was going to get the job at Howard. And then the names like John Thompson III, whose name was in the mix at Howard. Carl Hobbs, an assistant at Rutgers, his name was in the mix at Howard. They reportedly offered him a contract of $700,000 over 3 years. He was making $400,000, or he is making $400,000 a year at Rutgers. So he decided not to take that position. So it's just been, it's gone on since the Final Four. During the Final Four, which is where Tony, a lot of coaches go out to the Final Four to do interviews with ADs and others for those jobs. And finally, those two guys took those jobs yesterday. So Kevin Brodus goes to Morgan State. It's his second head coaching job. And I think that the issue with Brodus was he didn't want to continue being an assistant. He wanted another opportunity to prove himself as a head coach. At Binghamton, they actually went to the NCAA tournament in his first year there. And he had Binghamton on a good course before that scandal broke at Binghamton. And then Kevin Blakely, this will be his first head coaching job with a guy who's got some serious coaching pedigree that he'll bring to Howard. So those are two new faces, along with the kid Clarence Crafton, I think his name is, at Maryland Eastern Shore. So those are three new coaches that will be in the MEAC come the 2019-20 season.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's weird. It's all in the Maryland area there. I want to bring in my good friend Reggie Howell. What say you? Good evening, Reggie.
Hey, gentlemen, can y'all hear me okay?
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Oh, okay. First of all, Luke, peace and blessing and prayers start to you and your family. You know what I'm talking about. So my blessing is always with you and your family. What disturbs me a little bit, Luke, I'm just going to say this. Politically, our HBCUs have been under assault. We talk about Winston can't pay $260,000, which to me is embarrassment because these European schools have that that's pocket change. They're walking around money. But go back to, again, in your opinion, a lot of our HBCUs are looking at getting rid of sports, especially football. You've seen where NCAA has got rid of baseball. We see where Howard back then got rid of baseball in the MEAC. In your opinion, financially, can some of these schools like Fayetteville State, not Fayetteville, I'm sorry, Elizabeth City, and maybe even some of the schools down in North Carolina look at getting rid of football just to keep the doors open? And I'm being very serious about that. And a follow-up, if I may.
Yeah, well, if the schools are contemplating anything like that, usually football is the first thing to go because it's the most expensive. It has the largest roster, has the largest hit on the budget, expense-wise, equipment-wise, in terms of how many people you got to feed every week. I haven't heard, when St. Paul's decided to close its doors, and in that process, the first thing they did was cancel football. The same thing with Morris Brown University. Those two that have gotten out of it. Look, the job of an AD in an HBCU is very, very difficult, especially when you start talking about on the Division II level, when you're trying to recruit, maintain, pay the coaches, deal with all the equipment and the travel and everything else. Many of them operate at a deficit, without the large TV contracts. The same time you're talking about Winston-Salem State not being able to pay $260,000. You're right. Dabo Sweeney is down at Clemson signing a $10 million a year contract. Yeah, so that's a story that's been told and repeated over and over again about the discrepancy and the dichotomy between what Division I, what big time major Division I programs can do and what the HBCUs can do. So no, this is called many an AD's job because he has the responsibility of usually when he gets the job of recognizing he's going to operate at a deficit. And his biggest job is to make sure that deficit doesn't grow anymore. And consequently, You're right. People will get rid of a sport that has a lot of, they do what they have to do to maintain their status, whether it be in Division II or Division I, which is where
most of the HBCUs are. They do what they do to maintain that, but they're always looking at ways to cut corners and to cut money from their budget, to cut things from the program that are unnecessary. I can tell you, even A&T, who many people right here in Greensboro, where I live, many people think A&T is riding a wave of publicity and maybe they think it's a wave of money, having played in 3 of the 4 Celebration Bowls, getting in excess of $500,000 to play in those games, winning championships across the board. You know, they just swept the outdoor track and field championship. They also won men and women indoor track and field. So the reality is, however, that the AD at A&T is struggling every day to make ends meet, and having to cut any number of things from the budget as much as he can to try to keep them afloat. Yeah, so it's a daunting task. It's not an easy thing, and fortunately, the ones that have survived so far.
And my thing, Luke, is if you look at what Hampton did, a lot of people were upset, but once again, Harvey being the visionary that he is, they get a fat A TV contract, as T-Mac always talk about, the Golden Goose and the cash cow that is running sports now. And it seems like, I'm just going to say this, man, it seems like the commissioners of the HBCUs are dropping the ball. It seems like, number one, they don't market themselves as far as soft projects like just selling you uniforms. Number two, selling paraphernalia to schools. It's like some of these presidents and some of these people in the higher-ups look like football and sports as being I guess, subservient to the school rather than being something they can make money off of. The European schools make money off of it, and it seems like the black schools detest sports, you know.
Well,
it's like it's intramural sport.
Right, I follow what you're saying, Reggie, but look, this is the reality of the world we live in now. You know, the environment which birthed these institutions is not the same environment that we have today. You know, people talk about a lot. If you were to put Florida A&M's team from 50 years ago against Florida State, they would beat them hands down. Well, that reality has changed because all of those guys that went to Florida A&M and who graced the Rattlers and Jake Gaither with that proud program that FAMU has, those kids, their children, their grandchildren are not going to Florida A&M today. They're going to the Florida State, Miami, University of Florida, and then they're going to Oregon and Southern Cal and UCLA. They're going all over the country. So it's a different world. So I don't really blame or look down upon what the commissioners have to do and have to do today to try to maintain these conferences. And listen, let me tell you, Hampton left the MEAC, but Hampton is not the only one considering leaving these HBCU conferences. In fact,
Luke, you don't got breaking news now. What you saying, Luke? What you saying now?
No, what I'm saying is that many of these athletic directors are studying moving to other conferences, leaving the MEAC, leaving the CIAA, and going to other conferences. They don't do it publicly; they do it privately. They do it within their own organizations. They assign people to look at what would be the benefits of moving from the MEAC, as Hampton did, to the Big South, or to move to the Colonial Athletic Association, or to move to, as someone like Howard supposedly studied, moving to another conference. So this is the environment that we're in. So the survival of the HBCU institutions, including the conferences, is an ongoing battle. And this is going on whether it's in the MEAC, it's in the SWAC. There are teams in the SWAC that have threatened many times. I'm talking about Southern, Jackson State, and others, that they were going to leave the SWAC and go to some of these other predominantly white conferences. What
about Shawan? Where's Shawan going?
Well, Shawan is already 1 foot out the door of the CIAA because Shawan joined another conference. I've forgotten for which particular sport. I think it was lacrosse, and they may have a sport that they're playing that's non-CIAA, And I think they have a 2-year plan where they're going to move out of the CIAA altogether. You know,
Lincoln too. Is Lincoln going to move out there?
No, I haven't heard anything about Lincoln. I have not heard anything about Lincoln trying to make any move. But you know, this is just the reality, man. It's a dog-eat-dog environment, and it's a survival of the fittest kind of environment. You have to adapt. You have to change. You know, but you know, and again, the commissioners are not in a powerful position. They're kind of in a survival position. That's why, and I don't blame them. You know, the Celebration Bowl is a great idea. I wish they would get $10 million instead of $1 million that they split. I wish they get $5 million instead of $1 million. But this is an example of what the commissioners have to try to put together in order to, you know, to finance what they do in their conferences.
Thank you, sir.
Lou, excuse me. Before you go, because we got my next guest on the line. Excuse me, guys. You talked about the draft, the HBCU players early, late picks in the NFL drafts. You focus on 4 players. Obviously, you were correct. Titus Howard going from Alabama State in the first round, the 23rd pick. He went to Houston. Darryl Johnson Jr. went to Buffalo in the 7th round. Quentin Bell went to Oakland from Prairie View in the 7th round. And Joshua Miles went from Morgan State, went to Arizona. They're going to need some help on that offensive line. They got him in the 7th round as well. So overall, when you looked at the teams that were maybe drafting some of these guys and the teams that didn't, some of the players that you thought maybe had a chance, what do you see overall with this NFL draft?
Well, the biggest thing was, again, Titus Howard was very highly regarded. I thought he would go early. I thought he would go before where Darius Leonard, the Defensive Rookie of the Year from South Carolina State, went last year, which was 4th in the 2nd round, 36 overall. He indeed went that early. And I was worried after Titus Howard. There was not a lot of buzz for a lot of HBCU guys, but those 2 of those guys that were taken in the 7th round, Darryl Johnson as well as Joshua Miles, were on a lot of radars. The guy that wasn't on the radar was Quentin Bell out of Prairie View. He's 6'4". He played at about 215. This year they listed him as 6'4", 240. He was taken by the Raiders, and they say the main reason was he ran a 4.45 40, and he did a 41-inch vertical leap. I've forgotten how many bench press reps he did, but the Oakland Raiders, you know, and it's you know, teams will draft kind of workout freaks. But he did have a good year. He was a 3rd-team all-SWAC pick out of Prairie View, played 3 years at wide receiver before converting to defensive end this past year. So they got an athlete, a guy that they hope they can develop. But it went about as I expected, L.A. Bell was a surprise. I did think Johnson and Miles would get drafted, and I was worried whether they were going to have to go as free agents or they were going to have to go late. They did go as those 3 went in the late rounds. And then I did see also that Sterling Shippey, who was a very impressive nose tackle out of Alcorn State, he went to the Colts and went to their mini camp, and he earned a free agent contract. He's one of about 10 guys that signed free agent contracts. About 5 of them signed free agent contracts. 5 of them had mini camp workouts. And he is one that I've heard already. I've seen that he signed the contract to go to their pro camp when it comes up.
Well, we certainly hope that they do well, and we certainly hope that it may be even more that get picked up as the year goes on. Before you go, Lou, let folks know how they can follow you and find the Black College Sports page.
Absolutely. We're online each week at Onnidan, ONNIDAN.com. That's Eric Moore's website. The Black College Sports page goes up every Tuesday evening, sometimes Wednesday morning. It goes up every week. That's the best place to catch us online. We're in newspapers around the country, about 10 right now. But online, probably the best place to catch us because worldwide you can catch us there at Onnidan, .com. And look, thanks for having me again. LA always is enjoyable. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you so much. Luke Williams, of course, on the pad. We're going to take a break and come back and get Andrew Dixon, talk some soccer with him on the pad. Stay tuned. Batchelor with you and fighting colds and allergies and everything else under the sun. I appreciate the crew, Tony T-Mac, McLean, Reggie Howell, Orlando Hughes will be joining us as well. I want to bring in my next guest. Got that Hova playing in the background, that Jay-Z stuff. He covers soccer like no other. Does a really good job. He's passionate about it. He always talks about the best game on the planet in soccer. He's Andrew Dixon, and Andrew, appreciate you coming on as always, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always glad to talk about the beautiful game. Let me just give a quick shout out before we get started. You know, you had to talk about HBCUs and football. It's so often we think here in the United States that the first black coach to win a championship on the collegiate level was John Thompson with the Hoya team in 1984, but that is not true. 10 years earlier, Lincoln Phillips led the Howard University squad to a championship in 1974, and that was the first championship for an HBCU in Division I as we know it today. And actually, they actually had won it 3 years earlier, but because some of the prejudice at the time that was surrounding the sport, they found some. They tried to say that one of the players that was that Howard featured during that run wasn't eligible, so they vacated their championship. But they came back 3 years later and showed what they were what they were capable of doing. And not only that, they actually got to the final in 1989. And actually remember that because I was at George Washington at the time. But they got to the final against Indiana in I think it was 88 or 89, and one of their star goalkeeper at the time was Shaka Hislop, who actually featured for for Trinidad and Tobago going forward for a number of years, including when they got to the 2006 World Cup. It is now currently a pundit on ESPN. So, not only is as HBCUs, produce players, in probably yesteryear, if you want to call it that, in American football, but they have a real special history in collegiate soccer, and I think that should be recognized, I think.
And that's why we have some of the you brothers on, because you enlighten our audience. People just think you come on, you talk soccer, but I mean, I know you, Andrew. You know NBA and soccer
right.
and everything else under the sun. So, but that's a little known nugget that's very important for people to know about as we talk about HBCUs. And thanks to Luke Williams that came on. Before I go to T, I wanted to ask you though about this USA women's soccer team. Jill Ellis named the 23 players who are going to play for this team that defeated Japan some 4 years ago. Roster pretty much a bunch of stars, if you will, when you look at the high-profile international competition. I mean, you got Carly Lloyd on the team. She had 6 goals 4 years ago. Alex Morgan, Megan Rempano, Tobin Heath, Becky Sauerbrunn. I mean, they have a host of talent. Talk about this team, what their style is going to be, and more importantly, what they face, this challenge to try to defend their title.
Yeah, the team that Jill Ellis named, you've got a lot of the star power, as you mentioned, but she's brought in a lot of new players as well. So it's kind of a balance there. As not only do you want to win in this tournament coming up, but you also want to continue to build for the future. But as you mentioned, a lot of big guns are here. You got Carly Lloyd, as you mentioned. Not only did she have 6 goals, but she had that hat trick in the final, including that goal from midfield that brought me and my daughter out of our couch and jumping all over the place. I mean, it was just an unbelievable goal to pull that off in the final. You've got your Alex Morgans, you got your, as you mentioned, Becky Sauerbrunn. There's 4 black players on the team as well. Adriana French, who plays for the Portland Thorns and played collegiately at Oklahoma State. She's on the team. Crystal Dunn is going to be a starter. She's probably the most versatile player that the United States has. She'll be playing as a wingback. I think she'll be on the right most likely. But she can play just about anywhere in the field. She actually started her national team career playing forward. But as she has played, throughout her club career, both here and over in England, she's really adapted to both playing the wing and especially for the national team playing on the back line. But she'll very much get forward. It's just like you will see some of the great wing backs in world football. She'll do that. She'll really contribute to the attack, and so she'll obviously play a big role as well. In the midfield, as you mentioned, you've got people like Lindsey Horan, who's going to be there. But really the real strength of this squad is going to be in the attacking third, when you have players like Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe, as you mentioned. Kristen Press is another really top player. Tobin Heath, I think I'm looking at her to have a real breakout year. She has got great ability on the ball, and she can really embarrass a defender when she's on her game. So she's going to be someone that's going to be looked to really make a real huge impact for the United States in this tournament. A couple black players in that forward position as well. Justin McDonald, who played at UNC, and also plays for North Carolina Courage, and Mallory Pugh, whose father is black, plays for Washington Spirit. But she's like instant offense coming off the bench. I don't know that she'll necessarily start, but she'll definitely get a fair amount of playing time, especially if the United States wants to get a goal to either cement a lead or they're trying to catch up, which is possible. So there's a lot. There's a lot of firepower for this team. As you mentioned, you got 4 black players on the team, which I think is probably the most they've had in a women's World Cup. So it's gonna be interesting to see how much some of these black players get on the field, as well as what the United States is able to maintain their firepower going forward, because the defense is really where some of the other top teams like France and Germany and Norway are going to really think they're going to be able to get at the United States. As I mentioned the last time I was on, Australia was able to get into the back in front of, in that area between the defensive line and the midfield, really caused some havoc and put the United States under pressure. And, some of the top teams are really capable of doing that. So if there's going to be a real challenge for the United States, it's going to be, first of all, they're not playing at home. Second, whether their defense is going to be as solid as it's been in the past. But if they can keep their defensive shape and have some easy games for the goalkeeper, which will most likely be Ashley Harris or Alyssa Nasher, mostly Ashley Harris in the goal, they're going to have a really good chance of repeating. And that's going to be one of their toughest matches as they get forward, is how they end up playing France, who's going to be hosting it, who is probably probably one of the top teams, certainly in the top 3 or 4 teams, and of course with them hosting it, they're going to have a huge advantage.
We're talking with Andrew Dixon, of course, soccer analyst here on and writer on the pad. Tony's gonna take the question. After this one, and it's a two-parter for me, Andrew. There's some concern that as good as the women's U.S. team is, it could hurt the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, and they've had some very good success in terms of ratings, in terms of play. A lot of excitement in the air. It's almost like I heard some people compare it to like the USFL or the NFL, and maybe that's a bad example, but something taken away from the main game. Some people even said WNBA takes away from women's college basketball, which I think is ridiculous, because if anything, it helps it expand the game. Your thoughts on that? And well, I'll leave the men's side to T and Reggie, but just that question, I mean, is there any concern that, the women being so successful and taken away from some of those players that are playing in the NWSL, is that going to hurt that league at this point?
I don't know that it necessarily will. I think, if anything, you would hope that the success of the national team might actually have a little carryover effect for the domestic league. Now, that hasn't necessarily always been the case, in especially with the men's side. But if anything, you would hope that, not only is the United States, going to be well represented, the NWSL is going to be well represented on the United States team, but there have been other players from other countries that either have played or are playing in the domestic league. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to have, that detrimental effect. But the challenge always is, when it comes to competitions like this, is that we are, whatever you want, whether good or bad, we are very, nationalistic, jingoistic country. We love, athletic competitions where we're challenging other countries and where we're beating other countries. So this is why you always see, at least for women's sports, especially with women's soccer, because they've been so successful, you see a lot of attention paid to that. You look at, the success from the 1999 World Cup and how, popular those players were, like Mia Hamm, et cetera, Julie Foudy, Brianna Scurry, all them. So I don't know. It's usually two different things, especially when it comes to women's sports. And I've seen that with soccer as well, even on the men's side, is that, a lot more attention is paid during the World Cup, even somewhat during the Gold Cup, but mainly during the World Cup. But not necessarily the same attention is paid to the domestic league. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to hurt it to that extent, because there hasn't really been the necessary, the whole carryover from that from those international competitions to the domestic league. There probably wouldn't be a domestic league if it wasn't for these international competitions and the success the United States team has had. But I don't see how it's necessarily going to hurt them. If anything, you just hope that there's going to have that carryover effect.
And it's this is T-Mac, Andrew. In that same vein, to me the women compared to the guys, I mean, and we've talked about this before, they've dominated, and the men, they've had their moments, but let's be honest, is it just more of just chauvinistic sort of reporting, in a sense that the women don't get the same sort of love that the men do, even though to me they've been much more successful?
Yeah, I think that's just something that's endemic of women's sports in general. I mean, you look at how good the the women's basketball team has been. I mean, they never lose. They never lose when it gets to Olympic competition. And yet, the WNBA, it just continues to struggle. Now, you'll see, a lot more attention paid to the NCAA tournament with the women's teams and things of that nature. You see all the great programs, your Connecticut's, your Tennessee's, your Stanford's, your Baylor's, all of those teams. People know those teams. They know about that success, but most people couldn't even tell you who won the WNBA title last year. And that's just part of the struggle that women's sports has in general in this country. And worldwide, you could say that as well, but definitely in this country, there's always been that whole struggle for women's athletics to be A, taken seriously, and B, get that type of attention that will help propel it. It's interesting that you have this situation where the women's national team has filed suit against the United States Soccer Federation, talking about we haven't been getting paid the same amount, and you mentioned that the success that the women's team has had, but they said they're not getting paid as much. But to counter that, if I'm the United States Federation, I'm looking at the fact that during the World Cup qualifyings that they had, matches that they had last year, they averaged against Mexico, 5,000 people showed up, 7,000 against Panama. Less than 4,000 against Trinidad and Tobago. Against Jamaica, 7,500. 6,900 people showed up. Okay, I can tell you, I have to get tickets. I have to get in a lottery when the United States men's team plays Mexico. Those matches are always filled. Okay, now they do a little better with some of the the exhibition matches when they're playing, top teams like England and playing in France. Last year they played France and 25,000 people showed up, and that's a great crowd for any game, But when it comes to the important games, there just isn't that type of attention paid. And even if the men's team, even with soccer being, if you want to call it a fourth or fifth sport or whatever, you're going to get, at least for a World Cup qualifier, you're going to get 20,000 people in every stadium. So, and that's just the struggle that women's sports has.
And isn't it safe to say with those, it's mainly a foreign crowd? I mean, granted, there's a big soccer fans here in the States, but don't a lot of those tickets wind up going? I'm sure the crowd is probably more with foreign fans than probably American fans.
Not necessarily anymore. I think if you would ask that question about 20 years ago, I think you might have been onto something. You probably would have. Now, whenever Mexico comes, yes, there's a whole lot of wherever they go. Okay, just because there's just a whole lot of Mexicans or people of Mexican descent living in the United States. But other qualifying matches, you will get a majority United States crowd. And I think that's just one of those things that over time, as more people learn the sport and start following the sport, I think that's what's happened. So that's not necessarily true now. I would say about 10, even maybe 15. 20, maybe even 15 years ago, that might have been the case. But you still are going to get like as I said, that U.S. Mexico, you have to get into a lottery system to get tickets for that match. I mean, that's how hot that ticket is. Okay, because those are the two biggest rivals in CONCACAF. But Costa Rica, their fans travel well, but you're still going to get a lot of American fans in those things. So now I can't say for the women's because I just haven't been to that many. I can't remember that last time I went to a women's game. But for the men's, you will always get even if the crowd isn't a huge crowd, you're still going to get a majority U.S. Fan base that are going to be cheering for the United States in those matches. So
it's just to kick it overseas a little bit. You had a huge match today in the UEFA League, of course, and you had Liverpool pulling off a huge upset over Barcelona. Now, talk about the context of this for the UEFA League, and just how big this is for Liverpool to pull off this win today.
Yeah, that was shocking. Now you go back last week where when they were playing in Barcelona, and it was. Barcelona, they got an early lead, but, Liverpool was playing very well throughout most of that match. They were pressing, they were creating chances, they were putting Barcelona under some real pressure defensively, and then Leo Messi took over, and that's what great players do. I mean, he took over, and the free kick that he scored to seal that win last week was just a thing of beauty from that far out. I mean, he hit that from a good, I want to say like 25, maybe 30 yards, and still drilled it into the back of the net. I mean, it was an unbelievable goal, and it looked like that Barcelona was just going to cruise. I mean, they're up 3-0, and this is Barcelona, and this is a team that's if they haven't already clinched the Spanish league title, they're going to. And so for them to come in and absolutely lay an egg in Anfield, which now let's be clear, Liverpool deserved to win that game. They were on it right from the start. They got the early goal that they needed to make up, and they started making up that goal differential. But they dominated throughout that entire match, and I was actually working, but I was kind of following the score. I was working, and then I turned it on as they started catching up. But they dominated that match. They were physical. They were first to the ball whenever they needed to be, and it was like they shrunk. Barcelona shrunk, and it's not something that you would expect from a team that Barcelona, considering the success that they've had over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even 10 years. You wouldn't expect them to just kind of shrink like that. But it also kind of recalled, like Liverpool, you go back into the late 70s and the early 80s, Liverpool Football Club, that was the team in Europe. And the way Anfield was rocking and how they were singing, the crowd was just in it right from the jump. It was pretty amazing, the whole atmosphere, and for them to pull that off and have another chance. They got to the final last year, so they got another chance to get to the final. They got to like their chances to get either Tottenham, who's going to be missing players, or Ajax, who haven't been on this far in the tournament in over, I want to say, 25 years. So they're going to like their chances of getting into the final. But for them, this was a historic night for them. And it kind of recalled in the Champions League final back in 2005, I think it was, when they came back from 3 goals down against AC Milan to win the title that night. For them to do that against a Leo Messi who led squad, it was just something to see. And one of the best things about that, and I'm a Manchester United fan, and Liverpool and Manchester United are big, huge rivals, but to see the Liverpool crowd at Anfield singing their team anthem, "You'll Never Walk Alone," it was chilling. I mean, it was just, and it's just something you don't see here. You'll see, okay, we're number one, or shouting one person's name or whatever.
Sure.
But you don't get that kind of singing, that kind of chant from 70,000 people singing that anthem. I mean, it's one of those things that makes soccer so unique, and it's just just one of the reasons why I love the game so much. It was just an amazing scene.
And to me, I guess, just from the little bits that I've watched over the years, it's it's nationalistic. It's like you said, it is, for lack of a better word, it is a religion. because it really it can bond a country or it can bond a certain area of the country. And see, what's funny to me is that, I shouldn't say funny, but they have that national following, not just overseas, but you have a lot of fans. You always when you hear of Man U and Chelsea, and I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that you see they're national teams, and you get that sort of the passion. They almost take it too far, of course, with the with some of the with some of the rioting and everything like that. That almost gets overplayed as well. But it's beyond the jingoism that we have here in the U.S.
Yeah, it's really special. I mean, and one of the things, and I say this about any sport, one of the great things about sport, I always said there's two things that really draw people together that make you forget about differences: national tragedies and sports. Those are the two. That's it. Nothing else. Okay. You think about how everybody, all of a sudden, we were all like, hey, we Americans today after 9/11. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you get sports. That's the only two things that you will see two people who have absolutely nothing in common come together with. And again, to see that many people singing one song that loud, with that much passion, with that much pride after this amazing comeback, it was pretty amazing. I said, that's not my team by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just like, wow, this is just something to see. It really was. Yeah. But and you see that all over the world with teams, and not just with the national teams, but with the club teams, and as Liverpool is. You go to Turkey, Greece, Egypt. Oh my God, Egypt! I mean, it's insane. The two top teams there in Egypt, and Bob Bradley coached one of them, like Zamalek and Ali in Egypt. I mean, the scenes there are just like it's amazing. I mean, you can just feel the intensity coming out of your screen if you're watching it. So that's just one of the things that I just find so amazing about the game of soccer that you just don't quite get here. I mean, it's not like people don't care about their teams here, especially NFL, sure. But it's just different level that I see internationally with soccer.
I akin it to when we see when Major League Baseball goes overseas like Mexico or Japan. It's just it's a completely different level. We're talking we're talking soccer with Andrew Dixon here on the pad. 646-929-0130. Before we let you go, I want to shoot the questions over to Reggie Howe. Reggie, you there?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
My friend, thank you so much for your passion with soccer, and I'm glad you brought that point out about the racism and the white supremacy against Howard University when they had the team loaded with pure Africans and kicked the butts of these Ivy League NCAA that you just couldn't stand having that black school. How dare they come up and beat them in that sport? But that's a whole nother story. Two questions, sir. The college scandal that's going on. Number one, let's be honest. In my opinion, football and basketball, which majority of Africans live in America that play on the sports, are the economic engine of these European schools, which funnel the other sports like lacrosse, soccer, and also rugby, whatever they call it. In your opinion, and apologies if I may, how much has this scandal shown not only white privilege, but how much do you think it hurts those athletes that try to get on the soccer team? And a follow-up, if I may.
Well, it's interesting. When you talk about that, it's usually settled around basketball and football because that's where the biggest money is. So, the teams like, the baseball teams don't get that. They don't really get drawn into that. The tennis teams don't get drawn into that. Track, which is another big sport where you see a lot of Black Americans and and people of color. If we obviously you get track athletes from all over the Caribbean as well. That's not ever drawn into that conversation. So it really kind of really just kind of it surrounds itself mainly about through football and basketball. And another thing is that, and you talk about, you had this discussion with the HBCUs early. We don't see a whole lot of, we talk about Howard University, but you don't see a whole lot of soccer being played at a lot of these HBCUs because the budgets are limited and it mainly goes to football. So it's I wouldn't say that. I'm not saying that this is not an issue, but I would say it's not one that has really touched collegiate soccer all that well because really the real economic engines, so to speak, for these for these Division I squads are usually surrounded by the money that comes from watching the NCAA tournament and in what was the bowl season and now with the bowl championship series. So it hasn't really gotten to soccer, but it hasn't gotten to any other pretty much any of these other sports either. With baseball, and especially even with track, and again, there's a lot of black athletes in track, but it hasn't gotten to that because that same money hasn't been generated, from those sports. So I can't say that it's really affected in collegiate soccer all that much.
If I may, your thoughts that the NFL commissioner and T-Mac, I had to give him credit for this, and Big G, Garrett Morris Great, were writing articles many years ago about how the NFL wants to use soccer as a whooping board as far as way more concessions in soccer than there is in football. They try to justify that because they know they're losing a lot of athletes to soccer. Your thoughts on that? That's my final question.
Yeah, and this is a subject that we've talked about a few times. And here's the thing. This is what I'll talk about. This is the example that I use. Now, there have been players like Taylor Twellman, Aleko Escuderian, who used to play for DC United. They have they've lost their careers to concussions. Brianna Scurry, the great black goalkeeper for the women's team back in '99 and thereafter, lost her career to concussions. So they do happen. We can't act like it doesn't happen, okay? But you don't have the same level of just straight up violence that you have in football. And I think it's kind of folly for anybody from the NFL to even, kind of use soccer as that as an example of, there's being more concussions in that in that sport than it is in NFL. And this example I always use. Jack Webster, who played center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he used to talk about what he would do to try and establish his position when he was blocking. He would literally take his head, even though he's got a helmet, he'd take his head and run his head up into the helmet of the other player. So you do that for 3 hours.
Exactly.
3 hours during an NFL game, okay? 16 games a year. And when you're playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're in the playoffs. So you're talking about, 18, 19, possibly 20 games if you've gotten to the Super Bowl, if I've done my math correctly, of you in the trenches using your head to batter another man's head to establish position so that you can open up a hole for Franco Harris to go through or that you can hold off this guy trying to get to Terry Bradshaw. It's not even a competition. So I don't even know how that even comes into that. Now, yes, if you repeatedly hit your head with a ball, even though the soccer ball is not all that hard, okay, but you can really do that. Yeah, you're gonna have some issues, okay. And there have been soccer players in Europe, especially in England, and I don't know about other countries. I don't know if they've really done that study, but in England they have. I mean, they've noticed that there are some soccer players that have some form of CTE. From the repeated heading of the ball, okay? And again, if you're doing that, repeatedly for a 28-game season over 9 months, and if you're playing internationally, you're for European championships or into the World Cup, yeah, it is quite possible, and it has happened, all right? Now, the concussions that I mentioned Taylor Twellman and Brianna Scurry, those are like knees to the back of the head, and that's going to happen, especially if you're a goalkeeper, okay, or you're a defender. That's going to happen. But there's no way the level of just straight-up violence that you have, with Junior Seau and that young brother who fell off the truck maybe 6-7 years ago. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Chris Henry.
Yes, it fell off. Yeah, it fell off the back of the truck, and it showed he's got that. Tony Dorsett, Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon can't even remember games that he played in, even during that championship run. Okay? So, and that's, again, that comes down to the repeated concussions and injuries and blows to the head. Even if you don't have a concussion, just a blow to the head. I mean, just think, if you hit your head on a desk, just slam your head down on the desk, you're gonna be seeing stars. You're gonna wonder, why the hell did I just do that? Okay, because it's gonna hurt and it's gonna have an effect because the brain was not meant to slam up against a hard skull like that. So again, you're repeatedly doing that, you're going to have these type of problems. And so there's really no competition. There's really no comparison between hitting a ball repeatedly during a soccer match than you are going to have playing the game of American football. There's no way.
Yeah, I think that speaks more of the NFL's denial than it does the actual sport of soccer. I mean, like you said, there's always the risk, because anytime you're using your head as an object, whether it's football or soccer or what have you, there's always going to be a risk of it. But to try just on a fundamental level, because to go back to what you were saying in regards to Mike Webster, I remember someone saying that would be akin to what offensive and defensive linemen basically do. It's akin to like driving your car 20 miles an hour and then slamming on the brakes. Now imagine that, I guess, say 30, 40 times a day. That's basically what a lineman goes through. And it's funny because, when they always talk about safety, they're always talking about, protecting the quarterback, quote unquote, protecting the skill position guys.
Right.
But the guys who have to protect the skill position guys, the hell with them. They
exactly. Yeah. And that's a sad thing, because at the end of the day, the NFL, their players are their commodity, okay? That is how they make the money. And they'll make their money just on TV contracts. If there were no players, then you wouldn't be able to own the team. You wouldn't have a team to own. You wouldn't be able to, sell and market this team. You want to have these heroic stories about these great warriors that are out there playing, but you don't care. But you show that you don't care about them, And this has been going on for years. I mean, they actually, how long did it take for them to actually bring the suit? And then they had to settle it for much less than what they originally bought the suit for, because the NFL didn't want to budge on that.
And they're still trying to fudge out on it now as we speak. That's the crazy part. And they had to be shamed into it too. It wasn't like they had a come to Jesus moment and said, "Okay, we need to give this money to these guys." Before I let you go, I know you're a Celtic fan, and
nope. Laker fan.
Oh, you're not?
No, I grew up in Boston. Respect the Celtics.
I'm sorry.
I grew up in Boston. Respect the Celtics. Respect. I keep telling people how bad a man Larry Bird was back in the day. People don't want to give him his props, but hey, that was a bad man. I keep trying to tell people. But no, I've been a Lakers fan since the early '80s. So.
Okay, so who would you like to see as your next coach? Yeah, I know. I only got 2 minutes, so I know exactly.
Hey, T, I understand. Got the job, don't it? Don't Tyrone
I understand the infatuation with Tyrone Lue, because just the people are ready. It's they're saying he's close to it. They haven't made it official yet, but
Ty may be going over his insurance again just to make sure. But go ahead, Andrew.
I understand the infatuation with Tyrone Lue. I mean, at least he's okay. Right. I mean, he's won a championship. I mean, obviously LeBron is comfortable controlling him. I mean, comfortable playing under him.
That's just wrong. Freudian slip. Hey, T-Mac, 50 in the jar. That was a Freudian slip. 50 in the jar.
But you know what? He's a Laker fan. He can get away with it.
My question is, is he going to be able, the other pieces when he had in Cleveland, okay, he had a Kyrie Irving, playing at his best. You had a Kevin Love playing near his best, and he obviously had to sacrifice, his own game, to accommodate playing with a LeBron and playing with, Kyrie Irving, all right? But all the other pieces that came around, they all were able to come together. Is Tyrone Lue able to, first of all, what's the front office going to be able to do? And then second of all, he's going to be able to work with the pieces that they have now. Now they have a lot of young talent, but trying to mold that all together, that was that was something that we expected to happen, this particular year with LeBron coming in. And that just didn't happen. LeBron went down, and it was like, all right, Kyle Kuzma, I think, played very well in LeBron's absence, but that was about it. So it's really going to be about getting a coach that's going to be able to mold all these players together. When LeBron left Cleveland, was Tyronn Lue ever able to do that? Was he able to get a cohesive unit together to at least be competitive, even if you're losing on LeBron James? I mean,
that
Cleveland team after he left wasn't even competitive.
Yeah,
so I'm wondering if he's really the team he's really the guy that's going to bring all those guys together. Because let's face it, LeBron James has been in the league for 16 years now. So he's going to start missing games. And he missed a whole bunch of games this year. So is he really going to be able to, if LeBron James goes down for a week or two, is he going to be able to make sure that team remains cohesive, remains competitive enough? I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. That's my question.
Before you guests go, we got to ask, speaking of controlling things, how about Tiger Woods getting the medal of freedom today? What's your thoughts on that?
You should pounce on that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm laughing.
More propaganda from the White House more than anything else, I guess.
Here's my question: Are we not liking Tiger Woods now? Because for a while we were digging Tiger Woods, and then we weren't digging Tiger Woods. Now he won the Masters, and everybody was. We were all on Tiger Woods, and now he's got this presidential. What? I need guidance. I mean, are we supporting Tiger Woods now again? Have you noticed how that goes back and forth with him?
I thought schizophrenia. I thought selective schizophrenia. We want to make him feel good.
It's like comfort food. Me personally, I think it's 45 just sort of, deflecting and using. I know he's golfed with him before. I'm happy. I'm very happy for Tiger to see him come back. But it's twofold because now the haters are really going to come out now. And I personally, that kid that showed up at the at a match earlier this year with a T-shirt of his mugshot,
right.
It would have taken me all the strength of my and that God allows for me to choke that guy in public.
You got that one. I didn't know about that one, T.
Oh yeah. It was.
Someone did show it. And this was always my take on Tiger Woods. And I'm not a golf guy, so I didn't get all that excited during his reign, back in the late '90s and early 2000s. I mean, I'm just not that into golf. But one thing about Tiger Woods that I've always admired is that he's doing something that's completely out of the box, for black people. Okay, this is not something most people even care about golf until Tiger Woods. You want to go back to Lee Elders in 1975. Okay, fine. If you're that old. Okay, but Tiger Woods brought a new, a new focus. New focus in the golf. Okay,
it's Charlie Sippers. Grandfather of golf.
I mean, he did something. Yeah, he's done something that's out of the box. Okay, and then. He was at his top, and then I always say America's greatest pastime isn't baseball. It's building somebody up and then slapping them back down and then see if they can get back up again. Okay?
Yes.
And he did that.
If they have a darker, if they have a little darker hue, they sort of they sort of run to the
delight in it even more. They delight in it even more. Okay, but one thing I admired about him is that so many people wrote him off, and not just white, Jamil Hill, okay, Shannon Sharp, okay, completely wrote him off, and he was able to stick to what he knows, stick to his dream, and come back and win the most prestigious golf tournament. I think that's an amazing story. I mean, I really do, and I think there was a lesson in that. Is that okay? Yes, people will write you off, they will doubt you, but if you stick true to what you do, what you're about, you have the possibility to come back and ascend those heights again. And I think that was the only satisfaction I got from seeing that was that he really, I mean, he was at his lowest. Didn't even know he was ever going to play again with all the back surgeries that he had, all the people writing him off because, when he did play, he wasn't, the Tiger of old. So for him to come all the way back to the extent that even Phil Mickelson is giving him props, I mean, it was just an amazing story.
Yeah,
exactly.
Terry Garcia giving props. So should we look at the imagery of Tiger Woods rather than his politics? The brother did have on, no, I said brother, did have his red conservative tie on with the blue coat. I checked it out. It is what it is. I know I'm being petty. I know I'm being petty.
No. You know what? I look at it like this. And we sort of mentioned this before. You look at those pictures of when he won that first Masters, and then when you see him now, you take that. He's basically got his dad's haircut now because he's got the receding hairline and the bad back and everything else. But again, I think it goes back to what Andrew was saying. It does speak to the perseverance because I know for the longest time I kept holding out hope, but I'm not gonna lie, I was just hoping, I just hope he wins another tournament at this point. But the fact that he was able to win the Masters, and see the funny thing that people are sleeping on, he's only one win away now from the most victories all time with that. Now he may not catch Jack, but I would think at least he's gonna, if not tie and not break Sam Snead for all time wins in the PGA, and that in and of itself, he doesn't have to win another major is in that vein to leave his mark on the sport. And we can go back and forth about his politics and everything like that, and I've been guilty of going after him as well. But yeah, it was, if nothing else, like you said, Andrew, it was a great story in perseverance because we all know how low we all know how low it got and how ugly it really got. And I think if nothing else, I'm happy for his kids because they were able to be young enough to see it and really get the gist of what it really meant and what it still means to a lot of folks.
Right.
Absolutely. Hey, Andrew, we appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the fact that we could talk. I know you love talking soccer, but I'm glad that we were able to talk about other sports as well. But let folks know where some of your work will be. I know we're going to be trying to do some stuff with you on the site of BASM, but just let folks know where they can find some of your most current work, and what should we be looking for on the soccer? I know the Women's World Cup is still a good ways away, but what should we be looking for within the next, say, 48 to 72 hours in regards to the World Cup?
Yeah, I'm going to be putting together a little bit of a preview for the World Cup, and I'm really trying to get some time. I want to reach out to some of the black players that are going to be representing the United States, especially Crystal Dunn, who's really kind of established herself on that back line for the United States. So just look for that on the Black Athlete Sports Network. That's where I'm going to be. That's where I still post my stuff. You want to reach out to me, and I can be reached at Gold Noir, which is GOLNOIR, which is Gold Black in French. All right, and at AOL.com. Yes, I still have an AOL account, but that's where you can find me. I
won't hit on you. There's still people that use flip-up phones, so don't feel bad. You're good.
Exactly. And you want to talk a little soccer? That's where you can find me. But yeah, the thing is, I love the game, but that doesn't mean that I love it to the exclusion of other sports. I mean, I'm also a big tennis. I'm also a big tennis fan, and anybody that knows me knows how much I love the game of basketball still, even though I can't play it like I used to. Having the ball in my hands like that, I'm watching my daughter play and helping her out, everything. I mean, the game of basketball still means so much to me, and it's just like 1 and 1A, depending on the day, for those two sports. And the thing is that people think that we American soccer fans, we throw around the term soccer snob, or people who are, into soccer that, they can't see any other sports. And I think that's silly, especially in this country, because the sporting landscape is just so huge, and there's so many great games that are played, on a professional level. And really, you can have appreciation for all these different sports. And my love of basketball my love of soccer hasn't dimmed my love of basketball or tennis or don't think I was ever a really huge football fan, but I'll still watch a few games here and there during the playoffs. So it's sports are just fun, and I keep telling people that at the end of the day, sports is fun. They're games, and they're fun, and you can. There's so many different storylines in all of these sports, and so as much as I would love to see, and I have seen more black people getting into soccer, and it's something if you'd asked me 25 years ago, I felt like I was the only black guy watching the game, but you see it more, and so I just, like I said, I always, encourage people to, check out some games, go to an MLS game, see what it's about, see the crowd, watch games on TV. That's why I always tell, kids that I used to coach, like, watch the game. Watch the game. See how it's played. See the passion that these guys play with and these girls play with. See what it means to the fans. And that's really any sport. But soccer is just the one that I'm going to spread the gospel on as much as I can. So that's what I do.
Not a problem, and we appreciate you joining us as always, and we look forward to talking to you again. Maybe we'll call you up on that tennis thing as we get closer to the Grand Slam events later on this year.
Oh yeah.
Okay?
Oh, I love watching Grand Slam events. So, thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Take care.
All right.
Andrew Dixon here on the pad. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll finish off tonight's show. It's the Batchelor Pad here on the Batchelor Pad Radio Network. And we're back. Tony McLean alongside. You still there, Reg? Are you there, Reg?
Can you hear me okay, T-Mac? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yes, sir.
Before we get out of here, one last parting shot. What's on your mind?
Well, the Celtics, man, you guys made me look like I'm boo-boo the fool again. I thought for sure that they might have been doing something this year, but I got to give, Milwaukee Bucks and the Freak credit. They handling their business. Number one seed, they're doing what they have to do, and man, it's going to be a hell of a ride in this NCAA tournament. The NBA tournament. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it's typical Boston. I was going to bring it up with Andrew. Who's catching all the hell? Kyrie Irving, and it's look, this has been a group effort, and Orlando, I wish Orlando was here as well. Some of the blame's got to go to Brad Stevens as well. This is this team. This you get the feeling. Yes, I know they're without Smart, and Smart is a key component to them. But this is a team that I think they peaked. I think they peaked, and I think you're getting the best that you're going to get out of this. Now there will be some that may say, well, not when Kyrie leaves, maybe they'll whatever. But I don't see it. I think this team may have peaked. It's funny we keep talking about how the Sixers still haven't hit their stride and all this other stuff, but to be quite honest, I think the Celtics have hit theirs. I truly do, because I don't think you're gonna. Let's put it this way: I'm not gonna say the series is over, but the fat lady's warming up, and I can hear her gobbling back there. see, even if Boston is able to sort of take this next game in Milwaukee's already proven that they can go into Boston and win. So I think it's literally just a matter of time. Now, meanwhile, on the other coast, I know a lot of people have been going nuts, with the Houston and Golden State series, but see again, the home team hasn't lost yet. So they're basically holding serve. Now it comes down to 2 out of 3. And, maybe I'm stubborn or whatever, but I still think at the end of the day the Warriors pull it out. They may have to go all 7, and it may drain them if in their quest for trying to get a championship, but I still think the Warriors win it, although I would be concerned because they're going to have to get away from that, okay, we can turn it on and turn it off when we can, because you don't have the Cousins thing to fall back on now. And you would think because the bulk of this team has been there and done that, you would think that they would have the sense of urgency. And it's funny to me how they're trying to put this on Durant's lap. Durant's helped them win 2 titles. I mean, how do you?
Thank you.
How do you? It's I don't know if it's just the nature of the reporting or whatever, but there always has to be a bad guy, and it's like No, it's
you
not
know
just one guy here. It's a team in both ways with the Celtics and the Warriors. It's a team thing. It ain't just one guy.
Yeah. And T, real quick, we got to say happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays' birthday.
88 years old. God bless him.
God bless him.
I was lucky enough to interview him many, many years ago, and
that's why I brought it up.
Big highlight. Look, plus the fact he did 2 years with the Metsies, so that'll always endear him with a lot of folks. But yeah, it's interesting. The playoffs, no doubt, are definitely getting interesting. I think Portland takes control tonight. I think Portland will win. I think Portland will win tonight to take a lead in that to take the lead in that series. But playoffs, I've been going back and forth between the NHL and NBA, but this is a pretty great playoff. It's the NBA one, even though people are looking at it as somewhat of the Warriors Invitational. It's been interesting. It's been very, very interesting.
Yeah. Ain't nobody gonna lay down and give it to them. They gonna have to earn it this year. I don't care nobody says. Yeah,
exactly.
Ain't gonna be no Cleveland where certain person have a mental lapse and don't know which way to throw the ball. These players got high best IQs and they want to knock off the Warriors. If the Warriors win it this year, I think this would be their greatest compliment. People are coming for them.
And see, their biggest enemy may be from within. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the hard, and sometimes that's a harder opponent to beat than the actual team on the other end. But again, if you missed any part of the program, always go to the website. That's www.thebatchelorpad radio network. Tony McLean alongside Reggie Howe. We will catch you again tomorrow. I believe you got the Donelson Files and Dr. Larry show tomorrow. Then we'll be back on again on Thursday. So again, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of the playoffs for tonight. And we'll talk to you again Thursday on the pad. And guys, good night.
Great job, T.
Thank you, sir. Take care.